Leaks are real. Like, those are real papers. Don't be like,
I
is
think
this
so.
fake? I
Yeah.
think these are real and authentic. I think the story of a 21-year-old getting mad in Minecraft gaming, whatever it is, it sounds like, yeah, and they got mad at a a YouTube video in Benghazi. Like, that's trash. But this is real information, and it's actually stuff that people like Scott Ritter, Larry Johnson, Andre Martinyanov, and people have been saying about the casualty rates and everything else the whole time. So it fits with the info we were getting the slow way, the hard way. There's this giant leak, and rather than reacting to the information in the leak, the entire media is mad about, well, who did it? Let's catch this leaker. They didn't care when they leaked information on Michael Flynn, former head of the DIA, who took a trip and actually all he did was made a call to everybody in the Security
Didn't
Council,
break the
including
law at
Russia.
all.
He didn't. He
did
didn't.
not break the law
But
at
they
all.
leaked on him, and I was like, well, that's funny because Biden, you're on the phone with Ukraine doing actual quid pro quo, and you brag about it at CFR, and the media doesn't touch it. And if anyone else talked about it, they got
Or
kicked
China
off.
just released the financial records to the house. I'm anxious to see how that's going to play out because he's corrupt as the day is long. I think if you don't know that, then your head is in the sand.
I did a whole movie on the Biden crime syndicate. His whole family's corrupt. Not just Hunter, like all of them. Frank Biden's a hit and run. I mean, they're just trash.
His other son. I mean, I don't like you're not supposed to talk ill of the dead, but if you don't understand that his other son was literally the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. This is a kid that his dad got him into the Guard, into the cushiest job possible, sent him over to Iraq, keeping him as far removed from any danger as possible. They gave him a Bronze Star medal for doing jack squat. And then he came back and they gave him the Delaware Distinguished Medal of Honor. And then they named a whole damn training. This is what Biden does. He creates this legend, Bo Biden, Bo Biden, Bo Biden. And of course, because Biden never went in the military, he's living off of his son's glory, which is not glory, by the way. It's a freaking lawyer sitting in an office in the safest place there is in the world, attached to a communications unit. Trust me, I understand the importance of communications. I'm not bad mouthing the work that these guys did, but he wasn't, Ranger Rick leading, anti-ISIS, raids. This was a lawyer who was sent there, and while he was there, he was still double dipping as the Attorney General of Delaware. People don't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing things he shouldn't be doing because he's a politician. He's a corrupt politician like his father. And unfortunately for him, and tragically, he got cancer and he died. And Joe Biden has been living off of Bo Biden ever since. He tried to get Hunter.
And then his widow bangs his brother, and then his brother cheats on her with a prostitute who he gets pregnant.
Apparently, there's something going on with the. Never mind, but there's just a lot of things bad going on there.
Showers with daddy and all the rest of it. Those people are sick. See, your dogs don't even like hearing the B word.
Yeah, I think somebody just drove by, and there might be my kids might have ordered something from Grubhub or something like that. So
right,
we might have some food.
Isn't it nice so you can just have food brought to your house? Remember when, I guess Pizza Hut or whatever, oh look, they'll deliver to your house. It was a big deal back in the day. Where I'm from, we don't have any Pizza Huts or anything. We still don't have chain stores in Hatteras, but now Uber Eats or whatever, you just what do you feel like, and just order it off your phone, pay for it off your phone.
I refuse to do it because the
I'm banned on PayPal.
Crazy. The amount of money you have to pay for this is insane.
Yeah, we still go out. We do this thing. It's called move your legs.
Yeah. Old-fashioned way.
It's enjoyable to go outside and get food. But
now, if I had managed to preserve my Twitter account and I had that 25% boost in income, maybe I could afford, Grubhub.
Yeah, you wouldn't care. You'd be like, bring it to me.
That's right. I'm just going to become fat. I'm going to go one of those Jabba the Hutt fat internet trolls that just sits there and,
That's what happens to them. They live in their basement because they can't get up the stairs. They're just ordering food. But these NAFO people, I was in a Twitter Spaces, and I'm being very careful with. I'm not myself how I was. I got my Twitter back in the middle of January, but I've really been self-censoring because I'm like, well, let's see. And I'm watching people who kind of are like me and say the sort of things I say dropping like flies. So I just keep linking them to Telegram and go, I straight up say, I don't think Twitter will allow this. So check it out over here. Right? Because there's
Like I
certain
was doing
things.
this, I was doing the same thing. I was
Yeah.
really being careful.
Well, the other thing I did is I went around and I started blocking NAFO accounts for like 3 days. I just started nope, you're not even going to see me. You're not even going to see me.
But but again, that takes time.
I know.
That literally takes hours.
It's a waste of your day. It takes so long to do. But I'm like, if I don't do this,
then they flood your account. And no. But again,
and it's not like I'm fine engaging them. Like, oh, they don't have an argument. I'm blocking them because they're going to try and get me removed. And that's what it is.
And if Elon Musk doesn't know this, then he has a fundamentally flawed business model and a fundamentally flawed sense of business.
The mass flagging happened like while I was banned on Twitter. I had one of my t-shirt companies banned because for the Zionists went after me and they're like, this guy's like this. I'm like, and I'm not even allowed to defend myself because I'm banned from the whole platform. And because I had a boycott Israel shirt, they're like, that's anti-Semitic. I'm like, no, it's not. That's a country, not an ethnicity. But no one's allowed to say that, right?
But you're not allowed to say that.
And my whole store got banned, and every product I'd ever made gone. The artist is in jail because of January 6th, and they didn't do anything. It was just there. They didn't care. That's what they use the FBI to do, go around harassing Americans over almost nothing.
And if people don't realize that, I mean, I used to, look, I used to be Mr. True Blue, and I still am. I mean, I love my country. I'll never go against my country. But I've learned a long time ago that my country isn't defined by the FBI. I used to, I used to be enthralled with it. I mean, back in the day, I'd go to the FBI headquarters and have the meetings and sit there and just go, oh my God, I'm in FBI headquarters. I'm with real FBI agents and we're talking real world stuff. This is so cool. And then I realized that they're just all thugs with a badge and a gun. They just wear suits. They're well-dressed thugs. These are guys that sit there and joke about, the squad in National Security Squad in New York City. And you know who I'm talking about, guys, if you're watching this, because I know the FBI is probably watching this. Why don't you tell the people how you go around and key the Soviet cars when you get drunk? Because you're drunk on duty, by the way. You're supposed to be watching them. So you sit in a bar and you get hammered. How do I know? Because I was sitting in the bar getting hammered with you. And then you decide, what the hell? We're drunk. Let's go out and key the guy's car. How sophisticated is that? That's childlike, but they do it because they're the FBI. They literally do stupid things like this.
They organize the Whitmer kidnapping, or so much entrapment. Like so much of their success is the stuff they organized on their own. I'm suspicious about that Buffalo shooting. The guy that went in and did it. I mean, he's the one that did it, but he was in a Discord chat room with like 6 people, and 2 of them were FBI agents. They didn't do anything. They had a sting on the 1993 World Trade Center bombing that for some reason they didn't follow.
Yeah, they knew the guy was cooking a bomb. They were following a couple of the 9/11 hijackers, supposedly. I mean, so
oh well, I've had that story out forever. Now, Ifa Hazmi and Khalid al-Midhar were followed by the CIA too to an Al Qaeda summit meeting in Malaysia. They met KSM, came in,
but they didn't talk
using the real names. And well, the CIA didn't share that information with the FBI, but then the FBI knew it by August. Still had a month to nab them. Didn't do it. They're getting money from Omar Bayoumi and Osama Osman, which are conduits for the Saudi government. So there was covert state support for hijackers. The U.S. was aware of this. They knew it. I can go on and on about 9/11. That's another topic you just can't. You can't talk about it in an adult way because all these kooks that talk about the airplane denial and thermite and whatever, like that, it got to the point where it's just you can't have a serious discussion. I do it anyway, but I'm like, oh, I can't stand those people. No, there wasn't a bomb on every floor. Yes, there's an airplane. We're at the level where you're arguing about whether there are airplanes or not. So how are you going to get into the nuance of how these people got logistical support and financial support from states?
That's the important part. That's the critical aspect of it, is how did this happen? But that's the same way as you brought it up. Almost every major anti-terrorism arrest that's been made is an FBI sting, where
Mm-hmm.
the FBI suggests the crime, provides the instrument of the crime,
Oklahoma City.
coerces the guy into saying something that makes it look like it's going to be a crime, and then they arrest him and say, "This guy was planning to do this. You wrote the plan, FBI. You did it. There was no crime. No crime was ever going to happen until you manufactured it." And then, yeah, so
Mother
the
Jones, which is left leaning, they have a whole list of entrapment cases. It's amazing where the spooks have gone in and encouraged somebody to do something. COINTELPRO will get into some minor, uh, anti something like Code Pink or somebody like Answer Coalition or one of these, and then they'll sit there and go, you know what we ought to do.
yeah,
Right? I had this happen to me when I was lived in Virginia. I had an Outfox party, and I don't know. They just nabbed me as like the leader of this group because I was the head of a Palestinian solidarity organization at my school, and they had people come in and they were like encouraging us to do violence. So I remember looking out the window and I saw these New York tags on their car, and I go, "Gee, that's awfully far drive you did just to come to this little dinky event with 20 people, or whatever." "Oh, we're on our way to Florida." I was like, "Uh-huh."
uh-huh.
Okay, well, it doesn't match your accent and all this. And I was like, when it was a couple, so it was like less suspicious. "Oh, I'm married." No, no. But the guy was planting seeds, and he tried that. When I shut it down, went around behind my back and was like aiming at the other people at the event. These Bush and blah blah blah. I'm like, "Look, man, I hate the neocons and all that violence. This is gonna make it worse." I'd throw him out of my house. And then later I saw Michael Moore was like, "Oh, a guy got in a car accident and they found out he's a spook," and da 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 da. It happens all the time. That's what they do, is they try and encourage violence or encourage someone to sell drugs or whatever. All these agencies do this, and then they go and stop the problem they fostered in the first place. But they usually target low functioning people, if you know what I'm saying. And
If you saw that arrest that was done on this poor kid, in the old days, um, you know, Officer, Smith would have showed up wearing his standard police uniform, no vest, no nothing, just come in, knock on the door, and say, "Hey, can we talk?" And yeah, you have to come down to the station with me, you know, you can have your mom and dad drive you down. You bring them to the station and all that stuff. Now today, in America today, we have to send in a SWAT team dressed like you're doing a Baghdad raid. And if
well, like
that
when they
doesn't,
arrested Roger Stone. Oh,
yeah,
let's go in. Let's call CNN first so they can
yeah,
film
yeah,
this
well,
whole
yeah,
thing
yeah,
and raid in. It's like the old joke with the Forrest Gump thing. Life's like a box of chocolates. Is like, how's it like the police? Like, well, both will kill your dog.
I never heard that before, but
You know,
that's sad because I
it's
have
our
three
we
dogs
don't
and
have police academies in a lot of states anymore. Their training is piss poor. A lot of them are overweight. The first thing they do is go to the taser with a gun. Like the FBI is even worse. And
well, they all come
we
out
have
of the
all these cop
military.
and lawyer shows though on TV that
Yeah,
make it look like FBI, like they're out there
yeah,
stopping murderers or something.
no,
No.
no, they're incompetent, they're corrupt, they're drunks, they're alcoholics. They all have huge issues, and they hide behind a badge, and they hide behind, the bureau. It protects. It's the same thing with, you know, CIA case officers. I'm just telling you right now, straight up, they're not
Alex
very good.
Station, he hired all women. It's right. The hardest part of my 9/11 research was figuring out, could this really have been incompetence or is it on purpose? Because you can't tell the difference. It's so
Well,
bad.
but see, I'm a big believer because I know these people. I've watched them. That it's incompetence because they truly are. First of all, they're not as clever because all these conspiracy theories that everybody's out there weaving. I'm just like, do you guys understand that they're not that clever? That in order for this to be good, they'd have to be sober, okay, and then they'd have to actually do work to
Well,
come up
to
with.
me, it looks like something that was orchestrated by people who are not that clever. I mean, if you're going to lie, like they lied about WMDs, why didn't you go plant some? Because like this, right? The Niger forgeries, for example. All right, if you're gonna say Saddam's getting yellow cake uranium from the Congo and Niger, then the evidence you're going to use can't have obsolete military seals, be signed by an ambassador who's no longer even there. The
Right.
dates are changed in some of the document, not the rest of it. Like, that's a sloppy, incompetent thing. That
They're
looks
not thinking.
exactly like this is like what they would do, right?
In
But they know the media won't call them out on it, so it doesn't matter,
in
right?
2003, the Office of Secretary of Defense had a special team from the same group, Douglas Feith's group, that were the guys
The
that were
Office of
cooking up the
Special
intelligence.
Plans, yeah.
They're now panicked because they literally aren't finding any evidence of WMD. So they send this team in. It was the Scott Spiker team. You know who Scott Spiker was. So they're going in trying, because Scott Spiker was dead. I have to tell you, I was in the command post that night he got shot down, and we all knew what happened. We knew that a MiG-29 took him down, but we didn't want to admit that a MiG shot down Scott Spiker. And then the whole thing turned into, instead of confirmed dead, and then next thing you know, thanks to politics, his poor family is told that we believe he's actually a prisoner, where he's getting promoted. He's a corpse in the ground, dead, and they're promoting him, and they're creating this notion that he's alive. So the Scott Spiker team goes in there, and their job is to prove that Saddam Hussein had kept this prisoner of war and all that stuff. And eventually, the guy that they were talking to, who was a guy I knew from the past, he proved to them that Spiker was dead. He was able to do it. And so they finally had to admit he was dead. So now they have this guy, and they go, well, you're pretty clever. So what we need to do now is we need to bring some stuff in and seed it. We have to make the case that Iraq had WMD. So you're going to help us do this. And to his credit, he said, that won't work. And they said, why? And they said, Scott Ritter. And they said, what? It's Scott Ritter. What do you mean? Well, see, Scott Ritter spent 7 years forensically investigating everything about weapons of mass destruction. He knows everything there is to know about it. And you're going to bring in stuff from the outside and try and seed it. And Scott Ritter is going to be able to go, that's fake. And he said, so I'm not going to do it. And and they backed down eventually. They stopped. But the point is, these were senior Defense Department intelligence officials talking about defrauding the American people and the world by falsifying a case for WMD after the fact.
It was Operation Car Wash they did, and for pretext of mess around in Latin America, where they went and planted weapons cache and then went and discovered what they put there and blamed it on the Soviets. Like, yeah, I mean, the lies they're not that good. The only reason the deceptions work is because the press is a cheerleader for the Pentagon. Right, they're going to say whatever they want them to say. They lied about anthrax. They're like, "Oh yeah, there's this meeting in Prague, and Iraq gave anthrax to Al Qaeda. Israel said so, and so did the Czechs. Yeah, Mohammed Atta met there with senior Iraqi officials, and it was like, yeah, is this the one from the cartoon mobile weapons labs that also didn't exist? Like, was this balloons or something? And it was never corrected. Okay, there wasn't a meeting in Prague. Iraq didn't have anthrax, so they couldn't have given it to Al Qaeda. And guess what? Al Qaeda also did not send the anthrax. It came out of Fort Detrick. It was an inside job. They blamed the whole thing on Bruce Ivins. They didn't even question Philip Zachariah, who was on film illegally going back in the lab where he's doing gain of function research on anthrax, 23 missing samples. I could say this, you could say this, but there was no where to put this information, right? And then, as we know, if you put that on social media, they'll close your account and start labeling you, defaming you, as we've both gone through. So
back when the FBI was doing this investigation, I was hauled into to their interrogation room. They had put together a list of 40 Americans that were the top suspects. And my name was right up there because they said, well, you were in Iraq, you know how they produced it, you know how to make anthrax, and you have a grudge against America, and we think we have to, so I had to, they went through everything, and I said, are you guys serious? You actually think that I made anthrax? And I think it was more of an intimidation thing, but I told them I don't intimidate. That's just dumber than dirt, because they are dumber than dirt. The FBI is literally. Did you see their recruiting video? The bullet-headed thug. Hello, Russians. Why don't you come and work for us? And this guy's a counterintelligence guy, and he's out there actually doing this, thinking that he's clever. If you just look at him, you realize he's not clever. And I don't like to normally pick on people's physical appearance, except if they're FBI agents and they
If
shave
you
their head and
well,
they
you
try
have
to
to
look
have
tough.
physicality is part of the job in some respects, and I think the mind follows the body too. But did you see the new army recruitment videos with with it was like a transgender lesbian getting married to her girlfriend or something, and how she's in the army and it's all empowering and this and that, and like oh yeah, that's gonna go over about as well as a Bud Light commercial. They lost $6 billion. Like, what are you thinking? Is BlackRock and Vanguard that strong? Like, you got to get that ESG score up, so you're allowing men to take over women's spaces. Like, I don't care what someone's orientation is, but
so disrespectful to women. I
it
don't
is.
understand why women don't understand what's going on here, because it's literally, you're eliminating what it means to be a woman
You've ruined
by
female sports.
eliminating what it means to be a man. I mean,
Like, it's a
we're not
person
allowed to
playing
talk about that.
pretend. That's all it is at the end of the day. Like, just be gay. So it's okay. You're not actually a woman. You want to dress like a girl? All right. You want to change your name? Okay. You can, but you can't expect to get the whole community to role play along with you. Like, you're
Well, I
not
got in
really a
trouble
girl.
because I just wrote an article about Masha Gessen, who just she's all over defending this Evan character who got arrested in Russia, this
Mm-hmm.
Wall Street Journal guy, and but I refused to play the they their thing and all that. So I kept saying she. And everybody's like, you're disrespecting her. I said, or disrespecting them. I said, well, who's them? Because them is like two. And of
Yeah,
course,
who's
that's what
they?
Masha is apparently. Masha is non-binary, so Masha identifies as everything. And I'm like, you know, that's okay. But normally we call schizophrenics mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if Masha wants to pretend to be a guy, that's Masha's business, and I'm not here to tell Masha what to do behind closed doors or even in public if you want to walk out. But at the end of the day, if you're born a woman, you're a woman. If you're born a man, you're a man. That's the biology of it, and that's how you must be identified. Um, and to pretend otherwise, you're destroying everything. That you're destroying the basic building block of society, which I think is the whole intent
It's
of it.
that
I used to
Frankfurt
not talk about that. I
philosophy.
just want you to know, Ryan, I never
Hey,
talked about this.
you're safe on this show. You're
No,
banned
but
on
I don't.
everything
I'm not,
anyway.
because this is going to get out.
Like,
But I'm
hey,
at the point right
my
now where
brother, I have a twin. He does archaeology. We have never found a non-binary skeleton.
no, but this is the whole point. But it again, you'll never find a stronger defender of individual freedom than me, except maybe yourself. I believe you're a strong defender of individual freedom. You know, um, I think that homosexuals exist and they have
Mm-hmm.
every right to exist. I'm not going to get into is it normal, whatever, but history shows that it's been around forever. So I would suggest that it might be a normal part of the human existence.
It's like being
Um,
left-handed or something.
yeah, and it's not a negative. It is what it is.
Yeah,
It's
people
your
live in
business.
California.
but so I will literally give my life to defend the rights of homosexuals in America, just like I would give my life to defend the rights of any ethnic minority in America.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in equality. I believe in everything. But transgendered is not one of these things. This is an artificial construct. This is made up crap that's specifically, and it's been weaponized. And you know what
It
woke
was
me up?
horrifying. They're giving hormones to kids,
Oh
chemical
God,
castrations, and it's
how could
just
you ever allow that to happen? But what woke me up wasn't what's going on here in America, because I've always been of the belief that live and let live in America. I mean, even though if I don't agree with it, it doesn't matter. That you have a right to do what you want to do, and therefore, even if I don't agree with it, I have to defend your right. And that's where I was going on transgenderism and all this kind of stuff. But then I watched how the United States weaponizes transgenderism
yeah.
in Georgia, going into a very conservative society and using USAID money to go in and create communities of diversity. They literally call it that. We're building communities of diversity at the grassroots levels, which means you're empowering elements of society that conservative Georgians aren't comfortable with, like homosexuals. And while I believe that America must defend homosexual rights here at home, we don't have a right to tell anybody else what to do in their country. Let them figure it out. That's their business. But then we throw in the transgendered thing, and we make sure that they must be inclusive about transgendered. And the Georgians are like, we don't do that. We don't understand that. And then we take over their elections to empower these grassroots things. And then we create this media block, which is called, fighting disinformation. No, it's not fighting disinformation. It's fighting dissent. Anybody who says, "Hey, I don't want that," "Oh, you're disinformation. You're a Russian," this, that, the other thing. And I watched it happen, and I said, and the light went off, and I went, "They're weaponizing transgenderism to destroy society." Literally.
It's also an obedience test. It's kind of like the mask. If you'll put up the rainbow flag and all that, and just include the T on LGBT, then you're willing to obey anything. Like if you can get someone to pretend like they think a man's a woman, then they'll go along with whatever other bullshit you want. And so it's a way of weeding out like those who are going, wait a minute, she has a penis. It's not, like men don't get pregnant. It's a basic truth, right? Those are the ones that are like, okay, put these in category orange, right? Anyone going along with it, you're done. You're in the lowest one, whatever. And then me and you are like deep red or whatever. It's like they're not going along with any of this stuff.
Next thing you know, they put up a Ukrainian flag now.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I know.
And you don't even understand why you're putting a Ukrainian flag up. You're just doing it because you're told to do it. Well, what kills me again, I am such a defender of individual rights. This is what, but if you're a man who's rated 300th in the nation as a swimmer, you don't have a right to suddenly decide you're a woman so you can be number one, because all you've done is disenfranchise real women who trained their entire life for this moment. And you're familiar with elite athletes. There is this finite moment where you have your chance, your shot,
and you're talking shaving off seconds or tenths of a seconds when you're talking about running and swimming. Yeah. Right. And a girl, last name was Gaines, I believe, tied him in the butterfly swim, and they only had one trophy. They let him hold it and do all the pictures and stuff for political reasons. But I'm going to steal a joke from Tristan Tate real fast. He says, each generation, there will be what we call a legendary status. I just give it the Michael Jordan Award, right? That's the man in basketball. Not even going to argue about it. And you could maybe Tony Hawk for skating or whatever. And then you had like Muhammad Ali later on, maybe Tyson in 87, 88 seemed invincible. But who is this generation's athlete like that? Leah Thomas, ladies and gentlemen. She's breaking all the records and all that, It's ridiculous. They had a man do the powerlifting, and he was just doing it to say, and he was like, I don't know what he was ranked in the male one, but he just went in and just blew past all the records, because in Canada, you don't even have to do the hormones or the chop or anything. You just identify as a woman, and you can go compete with women. And they're letting men in women's prisons where they're getting women pregnant with their penis because they're not women. It's like, dude, having long hair or enjoying dollhouses or whatever doesn't make you a girl. All that stuff is cultural. It's whether the length of your hair. Some places that's not feminine at all, right? It just depends. Your clothing, that could change from period to period, but like biology is biology. They don't like this. They don't like objective truth at all. And this is an assault on objective truth as much as it is.
Which then resonates into everything we talk about, because once, as you're 100% correct, once you get society to put the T there and accept without question that a man is a woman is a man, and all that stuff, then you will accept that the United States didn't blow up Nord Stream. You won't want to ask any questions about that. You'll accept that, again,
the shape of the earth and things like that. Yeah, like they argue about petty stuff, and
well, what's the term? Nanothermite.
Oh yes, yeah. B team. I've heard all the 9/11 kook stuff, like the Austrian art students that they think were Israeli art students, and look, this this box has some numbers on it that correlates to this thing I found. And shut up. But that stuff, I call them kook conspiracies. There are conspiracies. Like Iran Contra was a conspiracy, right? People got convicted of conspiracy. This happened back then. They didn't kookify it. But as these events unfold, Jeffrey Epstein is another one. They're all like, he's still alive and he's hiding here. And they will saturate an event with so much stupid. I call it the ether of stupid, that it becomes a tar baby to talk about. Because say I'm going to talk to you about September 11th. First thing you're going to think, if you hadn't talked to me about all this stuff already, is another one of those.
Yep,
people.
that's exactly.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, that's
and
exactly
that happened to us in Texas. Somebody wanted me to talk to you about it. I was like, man, this isn't the right place. And some people came to the table and started asking the crap from Loose Change. What do you think a building can fall on its own footprint? And I was like, this. See, like even live action, some well-meaning, nice person, whatever, but it doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. And they've heard all this stuff, and they're susceptible to it because the government does lie to them about everything else.
About everything.
Everything. Like even what's a woman? I don't know. And that's why they gravitate to this shit. Is they're like, excuse my French, but like they gravitate to this because they're thinking, well, I mean, they start getting hyper skeptical. Maybe the earth is a pretzel or whatever, because everything else has been a lie. They had a whole bunch of lies around COVID-19 and exaggerations.
The Warren Report, the Warren Commission,
the Tower Commission, the Warren Commission,
everything, every commission that's put out.
Lee Hamilton was on the 9/11 Commission and the Tower Commission. He was the chairman.
All they do is lie because they don't know how to tell the truth. The government can't tell the truth. And the problem is now when you tell the lie, you empower people to, as you say, deviate from objective truth. Because now by telling the lie, you've created all potentials, because what you call the truth is not the truth. Therefore, all potentials now become open to people who now believe everything that comes out of the government. But the thing about these lies that they tell is there's a lot of objective truth within the body of work. It's just a matter of connecting the dots in the right way. What they try to do is you have the dots laid out that show a horse, and they go, nah, see, if we connect it this way, it's a cat. And you're like, no, but it's a horse. No, it's a cat. And therefore the official explanation is it's a cat, but it's a horse. But it's a horse. And this is the U.S. government.
Steal a joke from this Japanese guy I met. I was at a church, and the architecture was weird. I was like, what happened here? He goes, oh, that's a camel. I'm like, what do you mean? What's that mean? If my language wrong, is that's when a committee tries to make a horse.
Yeah, that's exactly
the whole thing.
When a committee gets a hold of it. But no, I was talking to two Marines last night, and they asked the question, what's the greatest domestic threat? Because they keep, their whole thing is, you take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against all threats, foreign and domestic. No, not Joe Biden. The American people. The American people are the greatest threat, domestic threat to the Constitution.
To them. I thought to us.
No, to America. The greatest threat to America is the American people, because they don't know the Constitution. They haven't read it. They haven't studied it. They haven't read if you're going to read the Constitution, please read the Federalist Papers. Just so you understand the context in which it was written. And then you might want to go out and actually read some of the major Supreme Court, cases, just to familiarize yourself with how the Supreme Court wrestles constitutional issues, so you can speak intelligently. You don't have to agree with the outcome, but at least understand the process that went into, for instance, Citizens United. A lot of people were spewing it because they heard it on TV. But when you ask them to get into the specifics of Citizens United, they don't know a damn thing about it because they haven't read it. And they actually, if you end up flipping the.
That's a good point. I don't even know if you made it on purpose, but like that happens all the time, where the television will say something and they'll go out and act like they're an expert on this thing they heard 2 days ago. Yeah. Right. I remember like when the rationale switched from WMDs to protecting the Kurds in Iraq. I'm like, you don't know anything about Kurdish people or culture. You learned that yesterday, right? And you're acting like, well, or the Yazidi in Syria. I'm like, shut up. You don't care about them. Don't pretend like it. And don't
Or
pretend like
Afghan
a
women.
week ago before
Something
that,
else
oh
we don't
yeah,
care
we got
about.
to get women's rights in Afghanistan all of a sudden, not Bahrain or the rest of the Middle East or like hell everywhere else. No, just here.
In a
Because,
Pashtun society that's, that we
well,
don't
yeah, I'll tell you
understand
what,
either.
those women enjoy better than going to college is not being dead. Because that's what your opium war got you. They never had a clear objective in Afghanistan. Okay, you get bin Laden, like, what are we doing there? Just squatting on, like, you can't win a war when there's no goal that you can go do and say victory, right? It's just indefinite occupation. Like, what's going on here? These people don't accept you. The moment they leave, this is exactly what happened. It was very predictable.
Day one, it was
20
predictable.
years in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
20
Day
years.
one, we knew this outcome. Day one. I had a debate with Richard Holbrooke on
I'd like to see that.
the History Channel. So this was in October of 2001. So right after 9/11, but before we began the whole thing. And so he and I are debating, and his whole thing is how we're going to go in there and we're going to, bring democracy and we're going to do this and that. And I said, why don't we? I said, this is dumb. I said, everything you just said, it's going to guarantee. And I said it straight up. I said, it's going to be this war is going to go on for 15, 20 years. Oh, what do you mean? I said, well, it's going to take that long for us to purge the ranks of Congress, of the people who have voted in favor of this stupidity before they're all retired. So enough fresh blood comes in to allow a political out, because this is pure politics. That's all this is about. You guys are trying to posture. I said, if you really want to solve the problem, we should be negotiating with the moderate wing of the Taliban. There is no moderate wing of the Taliban. I said, what about Mutawakil, the foreign minister? He's not. I said, he's the most moderate man out there. Do you know that? And I said, do you know that the Taliban have said that, Pushtunwali is, that's the tribal code. If Osama bin Laden did what we've accused him of doing, that they will arrest him and hold him accountable under Islamic law, which means he would have gotten his head cut off. All they asked for was the proof. And we're like, we're never going to give them the proof. I'm like, then you're disrespecting us. So now the solution is, what we need to do is get a whole bunch of FBI or CIA guys to go to places like Iran and Tajikistan and Pakistan, and just put the money out there to convince them to arrest Osama bin Laden right now before it becomes a big deal. And they will do that, and we'll clean up the Osama bin Laden problem. He will go away. And isn't that what we want? We want him to go away? No. We have to have a big spectacle about justice and all that. I said, no, then it will never end. And that's what happened. We ended up shooting a 57-year-old diabetic in a prison cell because he was in a prison.
Yeah, and Ron Paul said he's probably right there in that border, right there with Pakistan. Remember that speech? It's like Dr. Paul with his crystal ball once again. But that, bin Laden wasn't. He's not Lex Luthor. It's not some super villain on the top like that. The way it's structured is completely different. Like, we're giving him a million reasons to hate us and do terrorist acts, and I don't agree with them at all. But these things are predictable. I mean, that if you read what Atta and these guys wrote, and they're watching 500,000 Iraqis, children starve, and the bombing of Lebanon, occupation of Palestine, all these things to their people and their faith, and it pisses them off. And I always say, like, walking a mile in another man's moccasins, like, how would you feel if someone was over here doing the things we do over there? Well, that doesn't register as exceptionalism. It's like, we're just different.
I did a panel with Richard Haas, the name, Mr. Policy and State Department.
There's a lot of Richard, Dick Cheney, Richard Blee, Richard Pearl, like this,
dicks.
Yeah, lots of dicks. But, you got my joke before I got to the end.
Sorry.
A whole bunch of dicks.
But no, I was on a panel with him before 9/11. And I basically sat there and said, America's going to be attacked, and it's going to be because of your policies. It doesn't mean that I support the people who are going to attack us, but it's blowback. We can't go around the world and do what we're doing to people and not understand that when you kill a man's wife and child, the hate that he has in there is the same hate that I would feel if somebody came and killed my wife and children. I am going to get revenge. Maybe not now that I'm 61 years old, but 41-year-old Scott would have dropped everything and hunted you down and killed you. And I said, so they're going to be blood. And Richard Hodge says, no, I mean, he's this is why I have no respect for these people, because even people that I used to think were smart, they're not smart. None of them are smart. They're literally not smart. You go to the Council for Foreign Relations. I used to put these things on a pedestal. I'd be like, oh my God, the Council for Foreign Relations.
CFR.
I know these people and I know how they think now. These are not smart people. These are basically people that do the cookie cutter policy. They basically repeat what has been written by other people, just like they become instant experts. None of them has the courage when asked the question to say, I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that
It's
one.
not on the show today, but this is a great book kind of dovetailing what we're talking about right now by Martyanov. It's very worrisome that we don't have the James Baker or Schwarzkopf or like that. Whether you agree with what they did or not doesn't matter. Like, we used to have intelligent people, or at least
real
normal.
leaders. Real leaders.
We had real leaders. We had real leaders for this. This is such a cheap plug, but when this was going on, and we had even on the junior level some people that really saved the day. That's being replaced with equity hires and stuff. Merit has gone out the window. And
Jake Sullivan
we got
is a
these
communications specialist.
Yeah, well, look at Lloyd Austin or like even Newland. Like,
she's just straight up criminal. She's just straight up criminal.
She's just thug. She's straight up mafia.
Thug. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Look at Blinken.
So is Kagan, her husband. Like, he's a thug.
Yeah, well, he's a. I mean, that's the perfect husband-wife mafia team right there. Just bad people. Blinken is an idiot, a straight up stupid man, really a stupid man. And
so is Doug Feith. Oh, I wish I had the Lawrence Wilkerson clip on hand, but I'll try and impersonate him. That's so Colin Powell's chief of staff, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. Met him a few times. He actually taught at my college that I graduated a month before he got in there. But anyway, I wanted to take his course. But he's talking about Douglas Feith, and he's some people call him the stupidest man they ever met. And he is seldom in my life have I met. And he pauses for a minute and goes, a dumber man. All the words he was thinking. I can't say these, can't say the dumber man. There you go. He was a Muppet. Pearl, on the other hand, he was more the brains of the operation, but none of them are clever. Like Paul Wolfowitz is not an idiot, but he's not smart either. No. There's no adults in the room, and that's why we're ended up in the clown world that we have. And so bringing it back to possible nuclear war, with this conflict in Ukraine, we have these leaked documents from the Pentagon. Well, not from them, leaked from the Pentagon, out of there. And it's saying basically everything you've heard about Ukraine from mainstream media is horseshit, right? They're lying about the casualties. They are openly saying we're not going to negotiate until at least next year. A lot of things in there, and the content that was leaked is being ignored so that they can persecute the leaker. Same thing they did to Julian Assange. I'm like, well, what about what they said? It was true.
Yeah.
Does that matter? No, truth doesn't matter. That we're mad because they're not letting us lie. Like they did that with Hillary. They got so mad.
Ed Snowden.
Edward Snowden. Yeah, exactly. Or
Fourth Amendment violations. No, we don't want to talk about that.
No. He's living
Bradley
out
Manning.
there.
It's not just a murder video. He released the diplomatic cables to prove that everything we do is a lie. Everything.
Well, the Valerie Plame leaks too. I mean, it's true. You ousted Bruder Sturgeon's, and that now we lost the whole wing of the CIA tracking nuclear weapons proliferation. And you're mad at Joe Wilson and Valerie Plame, and you're not mad about what happened. I mean, damn. That's where they go. So they make heroes out of monsters. They make monsters out of heroes. Right. So Julian Assange is a monster, right? And Dr. Fauci and Zelensky and these people, these are the best people ever, according to mass media. And I'm like, Fauci was a serial liar. Zelensky's a serial liar. He's lost a third of his country. And these are the people that they heroicize. I mean, Zelensky could walk around with a halo.
Not for much longer.
He came... Yeah, not for much longer. Exactly. Well, let's get into what's going on on the ground in Ukraine, because you know what fixes lies is telling the truth. You know what fixes lies even better than telling the truth? Losing a war. And that's what's happening in Ukraine. So we have Bakhmut, which they all couldn't decide whether it was super important or not important at all. But they kept throwing more troops into the meat grinder. That hasn't gone well for them. How do you see this going in Ukraine now? I'll give you a couple setups. We have Finland joining NATO for some reason, and you've got Ukraine doing its like zillionth mobilization. They're running out of personnel, but they've asked for all these tanks and armored vehicles and maybe even aircraft and more of everything, more weapons, they say. Is that going, I know what you're going to say, but is that going to fix it? Will that help them with their great counterstrike this spring?
You know, the Tiger tank, when it was introduced on the battlefield for the first time in World War II, shocked the living poop out of the people that ran into it, because they weren't ready for it. And here comes the Tiger tank, and they're like, oh my God. That's not what's going to happen in Ukraine. First of all, every weapon system that we're talking about bringing into Ukraine, the Russians have been studying for decades, and they've been preparing to fight large-scale ground combat in Europe against these weapon systems. We've been talking about introducing them so long that the Russians have had time to form and specially train and equip hunter-killer teams, so that when the Leopard tank or the M1 tank or the Challenger tank shows up on the battlefield, the Russians have mobile hunter-killer teams who are going to come in and kill it, literally, because that's what they do. None of these weapons are going to change the outcome on the battlefield. The Russians are winning this war. They're winning this war hands down. They're not winning it the way that I think they're winning it in the Russian way. And the Russian way means they're not going to needlessly sacrifice their own troops. If the Ukrainians want to play stupid and double down on stupid, triple down on stupid in Bakhmut, the Russians will be more than happy to continue to kill the Ukrainians. There's a 7-to-1 kill ratio that's acknowledged in these leaks. I believe that the number is actually higher because they've suppressed the Ukrainian numbers. I think the kill ratio is actually, when it's all said and done, is going to come up to around 10-to-1. That's a slaughter, by the way. 7-to-1 is a slaughter. If you study the major battles in World War II, for instance, the Battle of Stalingrad, the Battle for Berlin, there were decisive Soviet victories. You take a look at the casualty ratios, it was 1 to 1.2, 1 to 1.3, meaning that these battles were won on the margins. They didn't swamp the enemy. They were hard fight. The Russians are swamping the Ukrainians. They're slaughtering the Ukrainians, and that's just the reality. And they're not just killing the people, they're destroying the equipment. NATO is bankrupt right now. I mean, the United States is literally saying this is the last thing we can send you because we got nothing left. Other nations are going, we got nothing left. Ukraine's running out of ammunition. They're running out of air defense. The Russians, meanwhile, are tripling their NATO.
We sell this in the store, by the way.
I hope everybody buys it, because that's
North Atlantic Terrorist Organization.
Well, I mean, ask Finland how they feel about NATO this time next year when they're bankrupt, because Finland doesn't have an army, a real army. They don't know how to fight. They've been playing stupid games, and now they have to actually pony up. Russia, at part of their mobilization, they went, okay, NATO wants to expand. Yeah, we'll just pump the numbers up to 1.5 million, and we'll just keep building. So there's a 70,000 man 5-division corps that's being built by the Russians in Karelia, right near Helsinki. Yeah, Finland, that means that if you do go to war against Russia, you lose your capital, you lose everything, because you don't have a 5-division corps capable of standing toe-to-toe with the Russians, because you suck. But not only that, you're going to go bankrupt. And that economy that's sort of like supposed to be your tax base, what happens when the Russians start hitting the off switch on all the things that you've been doing with them for the last, like energy and all the other economic interaction? Because Russia doesn't need you anymore. Russia doesn't want you anymore. Finland's in a world of hurt. Sweden's in a world of hurt. The biggest mistake they ever made was to join NATO, because it will bankrupt them fiscally. Their military will never be able to do what NATO wants it to do. And in the end, I mean,
Hungary's also a threat that they could just be using Finland's airfields to move some of those U.S. planes that can carry the bomb in them. I mean, how
they could, but the Russians aren't stupid. The Russians track this stuff. I mean, the Russians have already said, we used to treat the Baltics or the northern area as a nuclear-free zone. We didn't have nukes in that area. Now, because you're joining NATO, we're putting nukes in, and the nukes are aimed at you. And so Finland, and if you want to bring in all this case, see, the Russians view the F-35 Alpha fighter as a nuclear delivery system, because it is a nuclear delivery system. So even though Finland doesn't have nuclear weapons on its soil, when it starts to get the F-35A, the Russians view each one of those as a new. So every time one takes off, the Russians track it as a potential nuclear delivery system, which means the Russians are always on high alert. And the reason why I bring this up is everybody in the audience should understand we are playing one of the dumbest games ever. We're playing chicken with the end of the world. This nuclear chicken, this false bravado, this, we're NATO, we're America, we can flex our muscles. Dude, you can't, because the guy you're flexing against actually has been in the gym a lot longer than you. You've been off, atrophying your muscles in Afghanistan and Iraq. The Russians have actually been lifting heavy weights, and they're going to kick your ass all across the board. General Cavoli, the commander of the NATO forces, the senior general in Europe, spoke at a Swedish defense forum in January. And he said the scope and scale of the violence that's taking place in Ukraine is beyond the imagination of NATO. Imagine a general, 4 stars, saying he can't imagine that violence. What the hell has he been imagining for the last 20 years?
Oh, yeah. What do you think was going to happen? Yeah.
But they don't understand what's going on there. In the amount of death and destruction, and we don't. We're throwing numbers out there. People are throwing numbers out there, and the average American, it doesn't resonate. But you talk to the American in Afghanistan. If we lost 3 guys, everything shut down. It was a tragedy. 3 guys dead. Oh my God, the nation went in the mourning. The Ukrainians lost 600 guys yesterday. That was a slow day. All right, 600.
That's like what the Israelis lost in all of 2006.
Yeah, and they lost it in one day, and it was a slow day. And we don't know. And then we keep sitting there, and then all these liberals. Oh, I don't know what happened to the Liberal Party in America. Well, I do know what happened, but it's sort of a rhetorical question. The Peace Party. They're the most warmongering, bloodthirsty people out there. We have to support Ukraine. Support Ukraine. They're ignorant about Russia. You can't have a discussion with them about Russia because Putin is evil, Putin is bad. And the second you start to say something, oh, you're defending a dictator, you're defending a madman, and you're like, this conversation's over. Again, it comes down to the 9/11 thing. Can't even talk about Putin because it gets 9/11 crazy in terms of their what people say.
Well, Iraq too. It's if you said, look, well, you definitely said there aren't any WMDs anymore. We got them. So you love Saddam? You like Saddam?
You love Saddam.
You don't support our troops? It's like, I support our troops. I don't support what you're doing with them because you throw them into conflicts that are completely unnecessary.
One of the saddest confrontations I had was at St. Lawrence College or University up by the Canadian border in New York. And that's a university that has a strong law enforcement curriculum. So there's a lot of retired cops that live up there and all that kind of stuff. And I was doing a presentation, and this guy stood up, and my son is a helicopter pilot, and he's deployed, and you're here bad mouthing him, going against the troops, you're pro Saddam and all that. And I said, you couldn't be further from the truth. I said, I actually care about your son so much that I'm trying to stop us from going to war for a cause that's not worth the sacrifice that they're asking your son to make. Well, his son ended up dying in Iraq, and it's just like,
pointless.
How as a parent, how can you, I was going to use a bad word. How could you possibly sit there and think that it's a good idea to send your son to a war when you can't even articulate why? You don't support the troops by sending them to war. What part of that don't people understand? You support the troops by ensuring that they never get sent to war where the sacrifices, isn't worthy of the cause. The cause has to be literally a life and death issue about America. These wars of selection, I want to go to war here. What was the last time? The last time we actually fought a war.
Vicarious masculinity. It's, they feel so goddamn mighty, like shock and awe. They were naming the bombardment, right? Let's call it shock and awe. We're going to imagine we're so powerful. And it's little pissants like former APAC employee Wolf Blitzer pacing around on CNN talking about shock and awe. F you, man.
Oh,
Like it.
or who was that guy from MSNBC? Brian Williams. The beauty of the cruise missile being fired. What?
Blitzer talked about all those jobs for Lockheed Martin.
Yeah.
By the way, we have a word from Lockheed. They often sponsor this show. Let's hear from them. Yeah, there we go.
Reed Martin, proud producer and proprietor, patriotic projectile party poppers. Got some uppity brown people making trouble for your empire? Replace them with a charred freighter and a cloud of white smoke. So remember, if your next geostrategic boondoggle's going awry, don't call us, we'll call you.
Gotta get more ice statues in McLean, Virginia. You know, gotta help those poor welfare queens over there at Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and, you know, General Dynamics, the rest of them. Gotta help them out, right? You gotta have war. That guy's son died in Iraq over nothing, and he was sitting there all proud, like, we're over there, you love Saddam. He's listening to like the Rumsfelds and stuff that said, oh, we're just fighting dead enders. Did they know that wasn't true, or were they really that dumb? I think they're that dumb, which is more disturbing, because like if you're evil, you could fix it. You can't fix stupid.
Well, I think it's stupidity. First of all, they weren't willing to they did not want to have a discussion or debate. They did not want to let me speak.
The first sign of an idiot is not listening to people. The first sign of a moron is not being willing to listen to people.
Yeah, they did not want me to speak. And then when I did speak, every word I said was deemed to be pro-Saddam. They never once tried to challenge the veracity of what I was saying. They just simply said, oh, you're pro-Saddam. You're saying things that support the Iraqi position. I'm like, well, if it supports the Iraqi position, it's because the Iraqis might actually be using fact-based truth as their the foundation of their position. People couldn't acknowledge that the Iraqis might actually be telling the truth.
Well, they have to prove a negative, like prove you don't have something.
Prove you don't have.
Prove I have it. Then when you're talking about a war, right? Like, is there some? Did you see? I don't know, this weapon or that? No. What would be the motive for it anyway? Like, you're giving America a pretext to invade, and even after like the invasion starts, they're waiting for okay, here comes the gas or whatever. They're taking the mask off because they told them, yeah, they don't have any gas.
No, they're all wearing. These guys are wearing their mop suits in the desert, and we made them go to war for the first couple of weeks wearing this stuff. And people have to understand how hard that is.
Mm-hmm. I
mean, we took something that's already miserable, war. It's the most miserable thing in the world, and we made it as miserable as it could possibly get by making them wear these, charcoal infused heat traps. And it was all based on a lie that we knew was a lie. That's the thing that kills me.
Well, at least it wasn't the interceptor armor from John Kerry that's like every single color. You see that crap? It's like what's it called? The cloth on top of the body armor. They decided to go with this gravel colored green, white, gray, blue, everything, rainbow suit, whatever. It would not camo you from anything anywhere. But they thought, oh, well, they paid Ralph Lauren, I think, like millions of dollars just for a specific type of green. And it was all like industries out of John Kerry's district. And then who ends up on the Armed Service Committee. And this is the kind of stuff they do in appropriations, is argue about the cost of certain colors that are going to go on this jacket or these pants or whatever. And it's just a big profiteering ring. It's like, you're in the desert. The colors should be like beige, brown, whatever. It's not, this isn't a long discussion, but no, they wanted to involve as many industries as possible. So they ended up with this camo that you couldn't use anywhere other than maybe a paintball warehouse.
Has anybody taken a look at a combat Marine a week into the war and see what kind of uniform they're wearing? First of all, you can't see camouflage. It's just dirty. Yeah. It's filthy dirty. It's a smear of whatever the soil is all over you with shit because, guys, that's
On the
what
ground.
war is. It's snot, it's blood, it's everything, just right there, all over everything. That's what a combat uniform should look like. We shouldn't try to make it this beautiful camouflage that looks good on the parade ground. Screw that. You take the
With the little
uniform
digi
and
squares
you
and stuff.
basically just say you're going to just be. We're going to call it a smear because that's what it is. A week into war, and that's how you stay alive because you actually blend into the background when you're wearing the background. But instead, we come up with this fancy stuff, and even the Marine Corps went down the route of making sure that in our special camouflage that we had the Marine Corps emblem, hidden in there. And I'm like, no, smear it, guys. Literally, that's what it should be. We should just issue them plain olive drab uniforms, and before you go to war, we hand them mud, and you just do this and get it all in you already, and then you go to war looking like that because that's what you're going to look like in a week. And you can even make the mud stink, so at least you smell up front. But the point is, you let John carry. I didn't know that about Ralph Lauren. The fact that we have
there's this whole argument about dragon skin versus interceptor and da 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 da. And like, you got it's like, okay, contrast these guys out there on the ground in the sand, and then these politicians that are like, what if we get this to green from Ralph Lauren? You just want to slap them. Like, oh, it was so much money, and it's not. It's look at the Bradley fighting vehicle. We don't talk too long about that. It was so bad they made a movie about it called Pentagon Wars. But these assholes in wherever are just having these discussions like, let's add this to it. Let's make it aquatic. Let's do this. Let's do this. And it's not a transport vehicle after a certain point, and they start like, could we make it out of aluminum? Alco has a pretty strong lobby. Like, aluminum? Like, not like, I don't know, steel, something harder than that. No. Because
aluminum doesn't burn, by the way.
Yeah, according to the kook movement, like, aluminum. You ever thrown a can in a fire? Apparently not. Like, aluminum doesn't break. No, I'm not gonna get into that. Like, I deal with these people all the day.
But what kills me is while they're having this conversation about Ralph Lauren colors, do they not know that the E3 is on food stamps, and that his family is in poverty, and that the money that they're giving Ralph Lauren or whatever to do this they should find a way to actually take care of the instead of trying to dress them in some sort of fancy crap that doesn't matter. Why don't we take care of the troops first? Why don't we take care of the Marines, take care of their families, ensure that they have a solid foundation? Because you know what fucks up a guy in combat? I apologize for my language. In combat more than anything else, not thinking about combat. The quickest way to die in war is to stop thinking about war and start thinking about the home front. Start thinking about the fact that your wife's on food stamps, that your kid's sick and they don't have adequate health care and all that stuff. You just got the letter that says the roof's leaking. No one's coming to help me with the leak. They're trying to evict me, this, that, and the other thing. And now you're supposed to be, locking in your fields of fire and getting all this stuff, but you're thinking the wrong thing. Bam, you die, and the guy to the left and right die. Why don't we take that away so that when they go to war, they know that their loved ones are taken care of, that there's going to be a paycheck for them, that there's going to be health care for them, that if something goes wrong, there's a system there to take care of them. That's what's called caring for the troops. All you assholes out there who put that yellow sticker on your car, I support the troops, fuck off. I'm sorry, Ryan. I apologize for using this language.
Well, usually it was the magnets that were made in China that say support the troops.
But it's true.
On their
SUV. It's true. I mean, but I don't mind the made in China. I mind the. If you support the troops, come up to Albany and we'll go to the VA and you can help change colostomy bags. Okay, if you support the troops, we can go pull the drunks off the roads like we've done before, and take them to the VA in the middle of the winter. You know how many drunk veterans we find on the road because they're homeless and they're drunk so they're freezing to death. We throw them in the ambulance. We take them to the VA. They revive them for a couple of days, but then they have to let them back out. And we end up picking them up on the same road, drunk and frozen.
Or they're addicted to opiates that you liberated from Afghanistan.
Well, they're addicted to opiates because when they broke their foot and you didn't heal it right, and then you gave them painkillers while they're in the National Guard. But then when they came off of their active duty and they came back home, you yanked the painkillers away with no replacement, but they still hurt now and they're addicted. And so they have no choice now but to go find out they either have to buy the oxy off the street or they go get heroin, because heroin's a hell of a painkiller. And now we got a guy hooked on heroin, and we're going, oh, that vet can't. Again, I'm going to use bad words. It just kills me that what we do to our service members. We don't care about them. We don't care about them at all.
We got an anonymous donation for 49, and we have some chats here. Everyone needs to read this book, War is a Racket. That's the Butler book.
Smedley Butler, yeah.
Yep. And then we've got an Andrew Jackson came in and says, what's the chance China capitalizes militarily on Taiwan with the U.S. neutering itself or throws North Korea at the South? So 2 questions there. The chance of China capitalizing militarily on Taiwan or North Korea hitting South Korea. Well, I hope the second one doesn't happen.
China's not looking for a fight. People don't understand that. The reason why China's so strong economically is because they don't spend $800 billion a year on a defense that they lose $1 trillion. They can't account for it. They have a military. They spend $200 billion a year on their military. They prefer not to spend that, but they have to match what we're doing. But they don't get involved in wars of aggression around the world. They're not military interventionists. They're out there, building infrastructure and creating relations, making peace. Imagine that. The Chinese actually went to the Middle East and unscrewed 40 years of American foreign policy overnight, literally overnight. They got the Saudis, the Iranians together, make peace, make good, and all that kind of stuff. That's what the Chinese do. The last thing China wants to do with Taiwan is go to war. They want Taiwan to be what Taiwan is right now, a viable, functioning economy with high tech, a population that's ready to work. That's why they call it one state, two systems. They're ready to take Taiwan the way it is. The last thing they want is a war. And you know who's waking up?
And they're so close to having it politically anyway. If they're talking about China unification,
I think in 2024 it's over, because the Kuomintang is going to win that election, and they're over right now. While Kevin McCarthy and McCall are out there doing their stupidity with this current Taiwanese president.
She's abysmal. The KTM barely held on, and it's not going to survive another election cycle or two. No. But the thing is also, even if it stays now, the only thing that would spark a war between Taiwan and China is putting U.S. troops in Taiwan, because that was used as a launching pad by the Japanese into mainland China.
Significant quantities of U.S. troops. We have about 200 there now.
Right. That's not going to make a difference. But why again? You're playing chicken again. Oh, well, let's send another 180. Let's say Taiwan they'll look at the defense budgets and stuff. It doesn't matter. I mean, spending more doesn't make you stronger. It just makes it more expensive. They have gear there they don't even know how to use. They're not properly trained. They're completely reliant on the U.S.
They're also looking at Ukraine right now and going, no, we don't want that.
Yeah.
Taiwan has to know that if they go that route, Ukraine is actually mild compared to what's going to happen to Taiwan, because a Chinese assault on a fortified Taiwan. Again, when I hear McCall, we're going to strengthen, harden Taiwan. All you're doing is guaranteeing the total destruction of that island. In addition to sinking whatever American ships you think you're going to sail close to that, and losing every American airplane. I'm tired of these admirals and these generals talking tough. The average American has to know right now that our fleet is premised on World War II legacy type operations. That the carrier battle group is not a viable combat formation anymore. The carrier battle group is a death trap. The Marine Corps has recognized this. Marine Corps, I say we, because once a Marine, always a Marine, but General Berger came in and said, we're not doing the traditional amphibious assault group anymore. We're not putting a battalion of Marines on a single ship to bring it close to shore and disembark, because before it gets close to shore, it's going to be sunk. We're going to start parceling Marines out, 50, 75, come in with smaller vehicles, so that if we lose one, we don't lose everybody. We're still able to maneuver. He's thinking the right way. The Navy doesn't. We're still married to these multi-billion-dollar death traps that make no sense whatsoever. And then the Air Force, please, generals, be smart. Calculate the amount of fuel you have on your plane, where you're taking off from, where you want to go, and how much loiter time you're going to have where you want to go. And if you want more loiter time, how you're going to have to get a tanker in between there. But that tanker needs fighter protection. That's more fuel. You're so far away from Taiwan, you won't have any ability to do anything over Taiwan. Why don't they understand that? Well, see, the average American listens to some idiot with stars on his shoulder and they go, well, the general said so. Do you understand that the general's a politician? That he's not a real general anymore. He doesn't command anymore. He's a politician that plays political games.
Well, people will look at Ukraine and say, well, look at what a hard time Russia's having with Ukraine. And that's right next door. Taiwan's an island. They got to cross the water to get them. It'll be even worse. And it's the dumbest takes I've ever heard. Yeah. First of all, yeah, do look at Russia and Ukraine. It's a turkey shoot. They're not having a super hard time. They're killing them at, conservatively like 6-1, right? That's not good for Ukraine. Taiwan is so much weaker than Ukraine was too.
Yeah,
so much.
Well, the Ukrainians had a 260,000 man NATO trained army.
Yeah, they have a legit tough army, but it was still
a legit tough army, well equipped, well trained, well motivated. These guys fought, and they are fighting. You can say what you want about Mr. Prigozhin, the commander of Wagner, or the leader of Wagner. But he doesn't lie. He's a straight up guy about this conflict. And he says about Bakhmut, he said, Ukrainians ain't cowards. These are the toughest guys in the world that we're fighting. We just happen to be a little bit tougher. But these guys are good. They're courageous. When they die, he actually goes when Wagner retrieves the bodies, he goes and he supervises as Wagner cleans the bodies, prepares the body, puts them in coffins. And then so they can ship the bodies back to Ukraine and treat the bodies with respect. People don't understand that. You can talk, we've sit here, we demonize Wagner, call them.
They don't saran wrap them to poles.
They don't saran wrap them to poles. They don't cut out the organs. They don't do any of that crap. They don't shoot them in the knees. They don't execute their prisoners. I mean, there's this video going out. We don't know what that is right now. But, the interesting thing about it is the Russians are investigating. And when they find out who did it, I can guarantee you that if it was a Russian, they're going to hold them to account because the Russians are an army that believes in the law of war.
Well, every time some video or some claim like that goes out, wait a few days because every time so far it's been BS. Doesn't mean it's always going to be. This could be a real thing, but this is
well, Marines pissed on. We had Marines piss on dead Taliban bodies.
Yeah,
and it's not something to be proud of.
Throwing their pets off of cliffs and stuff.
And when we found them, we punished them. That's what you do. That's what a disciplined military formation does.
We had a torture prison in Abu Ghraib.
Well, not too many people got punished for that.
And two whole people got defamed. Lieutenant England and Gardner, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know why they got in trouble? Because they took pictures of it.
Because they were stupid.
Yeah. Dumb enough.
Not criminal.
No torture. The rule went out. No cameras.
No cameras. Don't torture. That's right. I love that. It's not. Hey, stop torturing. It says stop taking pictures of it.
Stop taking pictures of the torture. Someone just reminded me in chat. We are at the death anniversary of Stinkin' Lincoln. John Wilkes Booth put an end to him on April 14th, many years ago, 1865. That's another man that didn't care about the Constitution whatsoever. Preemptively arrested people and started a war that killed 1 million people. Could have been resolved peacefully, but the war industry is tight. And with Lincoln too, it was, hey, it's mercantilistic. They need these banks in Boston and Philadelphia and New York to get more money and subsidize the railroads and the foundries and things. And we can't lose the South. We'll lose all that revenue. Have a John Wilkes Booth. That's a nice cocktail. It's liquor root, Rittenhouse whiskey, and cinnamon sticks. So
I always get in interesting arguments with people about, Robert E. Lee is a traitor. I said, why? I said, have you read the Constitution? The Constitution as it existed in 1861. That slavery was lawful. I'm not a proponent of slavery.
Slavery existed in the North too.
Yeah, but my point is, that it wasn't the South that was violating the Constitution. It was the North that was violating the Constitution. Now, it was an imperfect Constitution. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. I mean, when you.
Well, they didn't fight for slavery. They offered the Corwin Amendment prior to the war that would enshrine slavery into the Constitution, and the South still seceded because that was never the reason for the war. And
Well, it's
West
about state
Virginia
rights,
breaks
it's
off from
about autonomy.
Virginia.
Yeah.
Kentucky had slaves. Delaware had slaves. New Jersey had slaves. Maryland had slaves. Washington, D.C. had slaves. California had slaves. They weren't fighting in slavery. They didn't bring up the Emancipation Proclamation until the middle of the war, which did not free any slaves in the North. Like, they were not fighting about slavery. That is a post hoc reason to justify that. Comes around in the 1960s, not the 1860s, during the Civil Rights period. Then they made it a war about slavery. That was a reason. That was something that was going on at the same time. But it's like saying, well, civil rights were going on at the same time as Vietnam. We didn't invade Vietnam over civil rights. Well, the only overlap there is the draft. Say, well, if you're going to make people fight for this country, they should have the same rights as everyone else. I agree. But that is not why they went over there. And it's not why the Civil War was fought. Lincoln said it himself, his first speech to Congress, he needed the revenue.
But my point is that you can't call Robert E. Lee a traitor.
No,
you can't call the Southern.
He's from Virginia.
His
father was a congressman for Virginia and a governor.
They were fighting.
7 Lees signed the Declaration of Independence.
No, they were fighting for the way the nation was built, and Lincoln was proposing unconstitutional changes to, the concept of the construct of America. But
what's the A in CSA stand for again? The Confederate States of what? America. They're like, we're America. Like, we're still America. We're just not in this union, which they had the right to do.
And then the Supreme Court passed I think it was Texas versus something. I can't remember what it was, but it was, but the bottom line is the Supreme Court afterwards, delegitimized the Southern cause. But that's, and again, that's why I always tell people, you got to be careful of the Supreme Court, because
Lincoln supported secession for Texas before the war. They supported the secession from Mexico. They supported bringing them into the Union, which, by the way, Mexico had abolished slavery. Was it 1829? And then absorbed, that piece of it was absorbed and created a slave state in the Union. They didn't have a problem with that. They didn't have a problem with Robert E. Lee defeating the Mexican army. They didn't have a problem with it. All those same generals were working together at that time. Yeah. Wilfred Scott wanted to have Lee lead the Union Army, which he refused. Yeah. He was not going to turn his back on Virginians when his family had governed that state and every representation possible from
but you can't have this conversation today. You can't have this conversation.
They're like, oh, so you like slavery? Like, okay, well, Robert E. Lee got rid of the slaves he inherited. Arlington Cemetery, where our soldiers are buried, was his personal property. He's fighting against Grant, who had slaves, and Sherman, who also had slaves. And they had contraband camps where here we go. You want this open? No. Oh, you're trying to, okay, you don't want your little brother to get it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Daddy's getting to work, okay? You want to say hello to everybody? Come here. Let's get number. This is the littlest one. Hello. See yourself? Hi.
Hello.
Let me pick you up. You want to say hi to everybody? It's our last podcast in Japan. Say hi.
Hi. Hi.
This is what we want to protect. Thank you. Because you had the second part of that question was about North and South Korea.
Yeah.
Well,
the thing about North Korea right now that I'd like to point out to everybody is
you can talk. I'm going to mute because they're going. You
the worst president in American history, apparently, Donald Trump, was actually working to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, and did what no other president had ever done, which is to meet 3 times with Kim Jong-un to try and achieve that. He was stabbed in the back by Mike Pompeo, by John Bolton, by the establishment. But he did something that, took vision. He was trying to get rid of nuclear weapons. And we take a look at North Korea today. They just test fired a solid rocket, road mobile, intercontinental ballistic missile, nuclear capable, that can hit the United States. They'd already fired off liquid ones. They have a viable nuclear strike force right now, and
He
they're
made a
talking about,
postage stamp of that. I don't know if you see this, but Kim and his daughter are out there, and he's like got his arm on his daughter, and in the background is this new weapon system they made
yeah.
with the ICBM.
But Biden, this is Joe Biden's fault. What people need to understand is Joe Biden could have come in. Kim Jong-un had said, "I'm willing to resume these talks with you." I understand, Trump got stabbed in the back, but
well, Bolton got down to Hanoi and said, "We're going to give him the Libya treatment." And what's the Libya? What they do? It got rid of his nuclear program, and they killed him.
Bang! And Kim Jong-un's going, "Nah, you ain't doing that to me." And so now we have a nuclear Korea armed to the teeth, with a nuclear posture that is mirrored after us. They're now talking about and you know how stupid we are. We get together with the South Koreans and we put together a 60 to 80 plane strike package that we fly straight at the DMZ, going to Pyongyang, and we have advertised this as the decapitation strike, meaning that this is how we're going to start the war, go in, kill them, and then the last second we veer away. And then the North Koreans are like, "We know what you're doing, and we got to tell you right now that the moment you cross the DMZ, we're launching everything. We're not waiting. We're going to blow up the whole world." And when are we going to start taking them seriously? This is the scary part. I mean, we basically, Joe Biden is the greatest threat to humanity that one could possibly. He's playing nuclear, roulette in Ukraine with the Russians, and but everybody's ignoring what he's doing with North Korea or what he's doing with China.
He doesn't take them seriously.
Was a nation that was happy to have 200 nuclear weapons, and say, because they didn't need any more. They said that's all we need to blow up enough of your cities to say you don't want to attack us. But now China's in the business of saying, "Oh, okay, let's just start pumping out more plutonium. We're going to start building." And next thing you know, China's going to have thousands of nuclear weapons. Good job, Joe Biden. And then Joe Biden doesn't have the courage to, change our nuclear posture. He's a man who was supposed to run on a platform of, what they called sole purpose doctrine. The sole purpose is nuclear deterrence, etc. He's now preemptive strike, the whole thing, forward leaning. He wants to kill the world. Or he doesn't, but the idiots around him want to kill the world. The people who believe in this thing they call the, back when we knew what the interagency process was. The interagency process is if you have to coordinate policy amongst the Department of Defense, State, Treasury, and everything, and everybody comes together and they come up with a unified policy that everybody agrees to. That's the process. Today, the process has been replaced by just the interagency. And when we asked back in December, we had the 35th anniversary of the signing of the INF Treaty, and there was a sort of a reunion, and a senior Biden administration arms control official came in and was asked the question, Biden ran on this platform. He's the commander in chief. Why didn't he make it happen? He's the president. He can make it happen, right? And the answer was the interagency wasn't ready for it. And I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't vote for the interagency. Did you vote for the interagency? Nobody here voted for the interagency.
I didn't vote for the other guy either.
To tell an elected president that they're not ready for it. And what Biden should have done is just fired them all right on the spot. Just said, "Oh, anybody who identifies as the interagency, come on in, close the door, fire. You're all done." Now, anybody who wants to come in and be a U.S. government official who recognizes the chain of command and the fact that I'm at the top of the pyramid, and as the executive, when I give an order that's constitutional, you obey it. And the last time I checked, it's constitutional for me to say we need to alter our nuclear posture so that we have the sole purpose doctrine incorporated. Anybody got a problem with that? I didn't think so. But that's not what he did. He succumbed to the interagency, which is an unelected deep state, phenomena.
I've heard you. I forget which show it was on, but you talk about the blob.
The blob. Right?
Yeah. Just this continuous unelected giant blob of bureaucrats that I don't think people realize. I mean, you vote for your representative, you get to vote for president. All the rest is a bunch of appointees and just industry people, and it
Rotating
never
door.
really. Yeah, Putin talked about it too, because it doesn't matter which one's at the front, because that's not who's really in charge. Like, these bureaucrats run it all. The donor class is the one choosing they're the ones selecting people. You get the front man. That's what you get to vote for.
That's
And
it.
it's just, and the blob, what could really change the blob would be a free press, but we don't have that either.
No, and we can't have it, because the moment the concept of free press, again, here's my question. What is the press? The press, the press. We are the people. So I would imagine that the press comes from the people. So a free press would include Ryan Dawson. Ryan Dawson makes a decision that he wants to use current technology, YouTube, to make videos. Whether you agree with Ryan Dawson or not doesn't matter. Ryan Dawson is the press. Ryan, because free speech empowers Ryan Dawson.
Could you imagine if I was the press secretary?
Well, it'd be entertaining, I'll tell you that much.
That would last an hour, if that.
No, I think it would be refreshing and honest. That would be different, to have a press secretary that actually tells the truth.
When was the last time we had an honest one? Have we?
You can't have an honest one.
I don't think ever. They get more dishonest. I think the one we have now
is a work of art. I mean,
man, I thought Psaki was the limit, and then they went lower. That Jean.
Well, then of course Kirby just frustrates you, because he's a former commissioned officer. So again, I'm one of those naive guys that used to put these people on a pedestal. And my God, if you were a rear admiral and you had that star, and I'm like, wow, you earned that. You got my respect. John Kirby basically has broken that mold forever. I will never look at.
He lied so much about Syria. It's ridiculous.
About everything.
Yeah.
He straight up lied about Nord Stream. Straight up. They asked him a question. He just straight up lied. He's a liar. I mean, that's just, and I know that.
About Nord Stream, they did change the ration. I don't know if you heard, it was like 6 Ukrainian guys on a yacht or something.
Yeah. The Andromeda.
And they carried how much weight and explosives into. Is that what they're going to stick with? The yacht story? That's it? Okay, Ukraine did it. Well, isn't that an attack on NATO? Didn't Ukraine just attack Germany?
Just attack. Well, they don't understand that when they say it. They're like, because
they already attacked Poland with an S-300, with firing 180 degrees away from what you're supposed to be blocking.
We should be bombing. The Leopards going to Ukraine should be manned by German crews trying to bring the Ukrainian government to account for attacking their. But it's a flimsy cover story that doesn't even withstand. Again,
like, who came up with that? And someone approved this, right? Like, think about this. This is how dumb these people are. Someone comes up with this story, which is like the Benghazi movie story, right? This is how dumb it is, and no one said no. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Like, let's go with that. And that's the story. That's their explanation. After first one was Russia did it to themselves. That was too much. And then Cy Hirsch does this piece straight to Substack, by the way, because that's kind of what you have to do nowadays. And Cy Hirsch, man, this is the My Lai massacre. This is the Abu Ghraib. He broke all these stories and in between. And then he's going to Substack because he knows you can't put that in the New York Times, right? And so then that puts enough pressure on them to go, oh man, we thought the goldfish brains have forgotten about the Nord Stream line already. Okay. Ukraine did it. These guys on a yacht. Here's our story. Boom. That's taken care of. And they're all proud of themselves. Like, yeah, we'll just say Ukraine did it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It was a German newspaper that broke the story, ostensibly. So you have the German journalist he's talking to his German sources and all this stuff, and it's all close hold and all that stuff. And he got mad at Cy because Cy said that the CIA was involved in this. And so he called up Cy and he said, the CIA, I never dealt with the CIA. CIA had nothing to do with this. And Cy's just sitting there going, okay, but have you ever asked yourself the question, why it is your investigation, only your investigation, is now being released at the same time in the New York Times and Washington Post, citing unnamed U.S. intelligence officials? Okay, how do you square that one? Guy can't square it. Can't square it. Why? Because the CIA was running the whole damn thing. That's what he doesn't understand, is that he was being used from day one. He was being lied. He was being fed lies by his German sources that this was all orchestrated. This cover story was orchestrated by U.S. intelligence because they're not going to let Cy Hirsch's story do what everybody.
Mockingbird never ended.
Why aren't they Why didn't Congress order an investigation?
Because they already knew the answer.
They already know the answer. Everybody, when you have the president of the United States doing live confession in front of the world at a press conference, saying straight up, if Russia invades, I will destroy it. I guarantee it.
We'll be able to do that. We'll be able to do that. Trust me. He said, but how? We'll be able to do that.
Sit there going, what? You know, I mean, talk about a eunuch. I mean, good Lord. But
it's the same thing he did bragging in CFR about getting the prosecutor fired that was looking into.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, we got someone solid and all that. But that had come out from the anti-corruption agency from Ukraine, and they guess what they did? They tried to put it on YouTube. It kept getting yanked. They put it on BitChute, you know, and went around. Now there's Rumble and Odyssey and Kick and some other things, but you know, until people, the American people especially, make it a habit to just stop using YouTube and Facebook and stuff, and like get on VK, Telegram, get on Substack, get on Rumble, make that a habit. Just erase YouTube, put the Rumble app, at least for politics. If you want to look up a music video, whatever, who cares? But like, if you want political news, most of the people at least copy their stuff over there. Duran's pretty good. That's on Odyssey. It's also on Rumble. My stuff's on Rumble. Like a lot of us are on here now. If this becomes a viable platform, that will break the monopoly, and that ends everything. And I know you did a speech with Sarah Westall recently as well on free speech. That's a good one. People should check out. I know you've talked about that live. Scott's been canceled at live events too. Last event I did in Texas, I was going to invite him to, but I knew he had already had a book signing in New York and ended up getting canceled anyway. So you could have come. But these,
you know, this is what they do. You know, and that's why we can't talk about a free press in America. We don't have a free press, not at all, because a free press implies a level playing field, implies a battleground of ideas. And that's what should make America the greatest country in the world, is the ability for ideas to compete. You know, you don't see me, and I don't think you do as well. We're not trying to silence anybody. You know, we're not trying. You know, I'm not trying to silence NAFO. I just want NAFO to stop playing stupid games. If NAFO wants to have a debate, a discussion, a dialogue, let's do it. The same thing with, you know, people who disagree with what I'm saying about 9/11 or what you say. I'm not trying to silence them. Never. I would never try and silence them. NATO, I would like to silence, but
that one, I just want them to fuck off.
You know,
yeah, I don't mind it. It's just, it's not even with 9/11 stuff. They amplify the kook stuff, and then they turn the dial completely off to anything rational. And you know, it's gotten to the point where you can't have a talk about a conspiracy at all about any topic because there's so many stupid ones. But that doesn't mean you can dismiss it categorically. Like, these things happen. There's white crime conspiracies all the time. If you look at FTX and some of these white collar crimes in this crypto market right now, there's a lot of collusion and conspiracy and organized crime. Unfortunately, we can't have a proper discussion now, not even on Twitter, because people are still getting banned on Twitter. As Ritter, what is this, your fourth ban? Third one?
Fourth. Yeah.
Fourth one? Yeah, fourth ban in a matter of months. Right?
Well, we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary, because I was banned in April of last year because of the Bucha, my original Bucha.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I was banned for 3 years and 3.5 years, and then I got it back last January of this year. But then I have to self-censor, and I'm not allowed on Instagram, not allowed on Facebook, not allowed on Discord, not allowed on Vimeo, not allowed on YouTube, not allowed on any of this. Can't use PayPal, can't use any of this stuff. They really try to cripple you financially for telling the truth. and
Yep.
then they defame you and go in and after it. So it's horrifying. But I think they are going to take a significant blow in Ukraine, just like they did with the vaccine stuff. People realize, wait, you mean it doesn't stop me from getting the disease? Like, no, it doesn't, right?
No.
So, wait, you mean Ukraine wasn't winning? No, they
You-
haven't been the whole time. It's just,
No, Ukraine's going to blow. I mean, first of all, I don't think people understand. Again, they don't understand the level of violence. They don't understand issues of sustainability. There's so many, shake and bake experts out there right now. I mean, I get
Ricky Bobby.
tired too of these. I mean, there's a guy out there right now, Jim Jordan or something. I think his name is. He's a former Navy Reserve intelligence officer. He hasn't done anything in his life. He's not an expert on anything. He was a Naval Reserve intelligence officer. He's not an intelligence analyst. He's not somebody who did work operationally. He was a reservist, who managed a unit and so he was good at paperwork. But he's now out there pontificating about things, and people go, "Oh, he was an intelligence officer, so he must know what he's talking about." No, not really. That's not how it works. You actually have to be an expert in a subject to know what you're talking about. But there's so many shake and bake people out there right now that are talking about things they just don't understand, and everybody just is nodding their head, agreeing with the stupidity of it. The beauty of stupid, though, especially in something like Ukraine, is eventually the truth will out. And when it does, I mean, people are going to wake up one morning, Bakhmut's going to have fallen, the Ukrainian army is going to be destroyed, and the Russians are going to be declaring victory. And they go, how the hell did that happen? Well, if you've been actually paying attention to the facts, you would have predicted this a long time ago. And then what happens? Because again, you can put the fuck NATO t-shirt back up there, because fuck NATO. NATO is bankrupt. It's a bankrupt organization, intellectually, fiscally. It stands for nothing. And it should be, it should be disbanded. And now, fortunately, we have Europe starting to wake up to the fact that America is the problem. I mean, I'm not a big Emmanuel Macron fan, but he went to China thinking he was going to lecture the Chinese, and he ended up coming out saying, yeah, maybe we don't want to tie ourselves to an American policy that's going to get us bad with these guys. And the rest of Europe, everybody's expecting Europe to go get some. The rest of Europe's going, yeah, we're liking that, because Europe's looking at Ukraine. They don't have to look very far. It's right across their border, and they're going, this is a disaster. Yeah. Literally, the worst thing that could have happened to Europe is happening, and it's because of Joe Biden, America.
I'm putting this up on the screen, ScottRitterMerch.com, so we can get an autographed book right there. And Cy Hirsch is in the forward. Real is telling us that America's dispute with Russia today must not prevent the renewal of serious arms talks. ScottRitterMerch.com at Scott Ritter Extra. Scott Ritter's also on Substack, along with myself and many others. That seems to be a very viable media platform, but you still need an on-ramp to get people to know about it. That's the thing. So I will plug you on my Twitter while I still have it, as well as Telegram. And I got to close this one out. We didn't talk too much about the battlefield stuff in Ukraine because everyone else is doing that. I wanted to get in the political arena and all the things that lead to these wars, which really boils down to us not having free speech. I mean, none of this would happen if normal, rational people are allowed to talk on an even playing field, because they don't. NAFO, these people, they don't have an argument. They can't win that way. They win through censorship.
Yep.
And hopefully we can make enough noise to get Elon and his engineers to fix these problems. Like, there are gangs, they make websites, they say, everybody go and flag this person. They've been doing this. They're not the only ones. It's not just Ukraine. That has to be fixed. With free speech, if we have free speech, we have freedom across the board. We wouldn't have these wars. We wouldn't have to worry about nuclear war. Do you want to die to fight the Chinese or the? I don't. There's nothing worth dying for, really, when you're talking about wars of choice, right? I'm not going to go die for Lockheed Martin. It's not happening. And it's not a diss on the troops to not treat them like a toy that you can throw into one conflict or another, so that these politicians can get richer and fatter and dumber, apparently. Where else can they find you? So you have a Telegram as well. You want to plug that?
Well, I mean, it's yeah, I mean, it's a Telegram channel, Real Scott Ritter on Telegram, and but again, the best place is the ScottRitterExtra.com, because everything I do
ScottRitterExtra.com.
is posted there. And for instance, when you put a link out, I'll put that up there as well. I put it on my Telegram. I used to put it on my Twitter, but can't do that anymore.
I think I missed your Twitter. I think I interviewed before and after. Like every time you were on this show, you were banned.
You missed you. I mean, I was impressed. I mean, I went from 82,000 to 114,000 that quick, and
yeah.
Then I went on the Alex Jones show, and apparently that pissed off NAFO so much that they shut me down.
Yeah.
Literally, I went on the
Melonhead
show.
will do that.
I posted the link to the show, and it was the most mild Alex Jones interview for an Alex Jones
for him. Yeah, he's a sponsor. Let's hear a word from Alex. If someone told me 15 years ago you're gonna have Scott Ritter on your show and show an Alex Jones spoof commercial, I wouldn't have believed it. But you know, they don't like Alex. He's kind of, well, he's wild, but he's a hardcore U.S. patriot for real. He does care about the country. No, he says what he thinks is true. He's just often wrong, right? He doesn't have a filter is the problem. I mean,
like he doesn't have a filter. That's the problem. I was sitting in his green room, you know, and I can say, because it was everybody knows when I went on, and they know what he was saying before I went on. So I'm not making anything up. I'm not denigrating the guy. So I'm sitting in there and we're getting ready. And I have to say, when he interviewed me, everybody kept on, he's going to interrupt you again. He was the best. He was polite. He let me speak. He just said, go. It was a great interview, a really a quality interview. But before it went on, he's up there doing his whole thing. He's like, well, I could do an anti-Jew show. I could do an anti-Jew show. I could do. And I'm like, I can't go on this show. I can't do this because, but then I listened to what he was doing, and the words he was saying wasn't what he meant. He was actually, you know, basically saying that he didn't want to go that route. You know, people were saying that you should be stirring up that thing, but he didn't want to do it. But I'm just like, man, you got to put a filter on that. You can't say this kind of stuff because you can't. I mean,
well, then he's reacting to his trolls. So what happens is like, he does this to both sides. I'll just quickly bash on Melonhead. But so Alex will talk about the Iraq War and this, that, but he just always avoids saying anything negative about Israel. And if he does, he just lumps it and be like, CIA, MI6, Mossad, blah, 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 blah. And so people will criticize him on that. And then he's like, well, why do you hate the Jews so much? And like, that's not what they're saying. However, there's also a faction that actually does hate Jews, right? A bunch of anti-Semites that are like, their whole motivation for bashing Israel is not because of Israel's behavior. It's because they just don't like Jews, and they think that Israel's behavior is because it's Jewish, like it's some biological outgrowth of Jewishness or something, which is ridiculous. But there is a faction like that, and they just hound on Jones so much. But that's on purpose, because you get someone to overreact. So what he does is he overreacts to actual anti-Semites and then ends up not talking about what you ought to talk about, which is plenty of very real crimes by the Israeli state, right? It's very hard to have this nuance. The same thing with Saudi Arabia. Someone's going to be like, oh, you're Islamophobic. Like, no, I just don't want to kill kids in Yemen, you know? But that's, you know, it's sorry to be so blunt.
That's apparently neither do the Chinese, because they're making peace break out all over.
How far are we? How deep in our own end zone are we? Where we're like, Xi Jinping, pretty based, man. Like he's doing it right. Like that's what I have to cheer for. Like that's my W is China coming in and making more sense. But hey, if they can make peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia, so be it. We've really pushed the men to China's arms. Like, bravo, U.S. I mean, China's like, we don't have to do anything. We just Biden. It's almost like he works for us.
I think he does. I think
Beijing, he's got enough really. Seeing is, it's like a result of, it's a combination of his incompetence and, you know, they're out there shooting at balloons, which was the dumbest damn thing. They didn't use a Sidewinder missile. Aren't those like $400 million or something? Like
they used an AMRAAM, I think. So
did they?
Like even more expensive. Yeah, not 400 million. I think it was a $400,000 missile, but they had to fire a couple of them.
But they used a $500,000 jet, so, or $500 million jet.
$1 billion jet.
Yeah, $500 million jet. Jesus. They should have.
They actually let the pilot paint a balloon on his airplane.
Oh, for the
I don't know
hitting
if that was a joke, but
is that I can't tell the difference between sarcasm and stupidity
that's a
anymore.
certified kill now. So if he shot down 4 more, he'd be an ace.
Get those domestic balloons. Most of them were just hobbyists and stuff, and they're shooting balloons.
They're shooting them down.
What do you think the Chinese thought? They're sitting back watching them freak out about a weather balloon. And then when they get it, they're like, "Oh, it landed in the ocean. I guess we'll never be able to recover whatever data they were stealing." As like, "Oh yeah, I'm sure China sent a slow-moving, high-altitude balloon to spy on farms in Montana and Canada." Like,
we know what it was.
They have satellites.
The balloon was literally, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. It started over the Tibetan Plateau because of China is worried about global warming. And so they put this tethered balloon up there that was collecting data over there to find out about glacier melt and things of that nature, because China needs to figure out, flooding and water resources and all this kind of stuff. But then they realized that they're collecting a point in time, but they're not understanding what happened before these particles they're collecting came there. And so they detetherized the balloon and they put they made it so it could maneuver. But remember, it's still being pushed by
the streams,
current. So it can maneuver within that, and they can control it, but then it broke lock. And what happens when you have something like that break lock, it goes into an automatic search sequence where the balloon starts moving, searching for a signal. And we're sitting there, and we know this because I think they actually built some of these experiments using U.S. money, sort of what we did in Wuhan.
Yeah, slide that in there.
Imagine America investing in Chinese research. But so we know everything that's going on there, and yet we allowed this story to be put up about a balloon that has, again, people need to get into you got to be careful about it, but the technology of intelligence collection, the balloon is not the ideal collection platform. The geosynchronous satellite is the ideal collection.
Or Fang sleeping with Swalwell, or
right, well, yeah, or that. But my point
or Patrick Ho, or any of these Chinese spies working with the Bidens.
Would they send something over to collect? It makes no sense. And yet the stupid American people, and again, I apologize to anybody out there if I'm insulting you, but most of you are pretty stupid because you don't think, you just read the not the people watching the show, but in general, they read the newspaper and they go, oh, China. Again, shake and bake experts. How many freaking Chinese experts did we grow overnight? Suddenly everybody's a goddamn expert about China, about balloons, about intelligence collection, and you're just spewing crap. And everybody's going, wow, yeah, that's really impressive. No, it's not. And then
they're like the character on Cheers, the mailman. Was it Cliff?
Yeah, Norm.
Or Norm?
No.
It's Cliff, I think. Is it Clyde? Okay, the guy, the mail guy, is like, well, he's got some story. It's like, that's your shake and bake expert right there.
Right there, he is literally the shake and bake guy because he's a federal employee.
That's part of that. Yeah, I'm a federal employee. Got almost 500 watching right now. We're on Rumble, we're on Kick, brand new, and we are also on Odyssey, where is in the lead for the money, and we're on Power Chat. We have a couple of anonymous ones. Thanks to both you guys. Thanks for all you do, guys. Another 10. I support Cozy and you. Let's see. All right, that's coming in. I gotta let Scott go because I have so much to do, packing up, going to
you gotta move
another country. I already had a couple visitors come in looking for me, so they wanted it was this jelly, and the older kid was saying, "No, you can't let him open this; he'll make a mess." So yeah, you're right. He was in charge. His mom just did a quick errand, and he's like, "I'm in charge. I gotta go tell Dad you're getting the jelly." So anyway, I'll have you back on when I get back, when I'm all set up in Korea. There's plenty to talk about.
Well, good luck with the move.
Thank you. It's a headache. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be worth it. And maybe one day we could, even if it's not a show, just even privately, I want to talk to you about September 11th, share to you what I know about it. So
sure,
that'd be fun.
Anytime.
Excellent. All right, guys. see you whenever the next time I do this. I'm going to jump on Telegram for a little bit now as I'm cleaning, and I think I'm talking about Palestine, it looks like. All right. Thank you, Scott.
Okay.
Thank you
Have
much.
a good night, Ryan. Thanks again.